So why did critics at Cannes give a film about Kurdish freedom fighters so much hate? Together we're going to find out exactly why this film was so controversial and what's happening to it now. This is Amy, back again and now with a microphone, here to chat with you about the controversial Cannes film Girls of the Sun. This movie has yet to be released for public viewing, but I was lucky enough to snag a seat in an exclusive screening last week. If you'd like to support this channel and hear more from me, then you can like this video, subscribe to this channel and ring the bell below for more updates. Girls of the Sun was filmed in Georgia, screened to compete for the Palme d'Or at Cannes 2018 Film Festival, and was written and directed by Eva Hassan as her second feature film. Hassan originally began as an actress, and while she herself is French, in conversation about her inspirations for Girls of the Sun, she cites her family's Spanish communist and anarchist roots, saying, "When you have such a heavy history in your blood, it has a big mark on your imagination." That heavy history also made a big mark on her second film, which follows a unit of Kurdish soldiers as they fight ISIS for control of their country and for the freedom of their loved ones. This unit is special too because it's made up of individuals who were previously kidnapped, raped and forced into slavery before escaping and joining the Kurdish army. The subject this film highlights is a worthy one that hasn't been given enough attention. It illustrates atrocities that are happening right now. So why then did it receive such negative reviews? There seem to be three main points of contention. 1. That the dramatisation of this struggle is wrong. 2. That the dialogue was unrealistic. And 3. That some post-production choices, specifically the music, were poorly matched to the subject matter. David Sexton, for instance, of the London Evening Standard, called the dialogue heavily pointful and much of the acting wooden, awarding the picture 3 stars. Chelsea Phillips Carr of Scene Creek wrote, "Girls of the Sun is simply not in good taste. It makes serious issues feel cheap." And Paul Ennis of Now Toronto expanded on this, suggesting that a documentary might have served them better. I feel compelled, though, to argue this point directly. You don't have to be a film critic to know that most documentaries simply don't draw audiences the way that based on a true story features do. If the issue is so important, and I didn't see a single critic argue that it wasn't, isn't it the responsibility of filmmakers to get it to as wide an audience as possible? Other films that provoke discussion about their contemporary conflicts, 2013's Lone Survivor for example, face no such outrage about their dramatic recreation. I'd go so far as to say that critics held this film to a higher standard than your average war or action movie. I got to witness some critical reception firsthand at the screening I attended and interestingly got the chance to compare those opinions with audience opinion. While critical discussion quickly descended into the use of literary theory to second guess audience reception, the opinions of people who'd come to see the film by chance were overwhelmingly positive. This disparity between what an audience thought of the film and what critics and distributors thought an audience would think of the film became my main takeaway about why critics received the film so poorly to begin with. As members of the film industry tried to make assumptions about who would see this film and why, they got further and further from the truth, stating as fact that because the unit was female, men wouldn't go to see it, and that it couldn't classify as a war or an action film for that reason, despite depicting nothing but war. There was even an argument that it wouldn't draw the coveted young audience, despite the growing number of young people now travelling from the UK to fight with Kurdish forces. As people in the film industry struggle to understand, I have to wonder whether they are the problem, being the people who maintain and enforce the status quo while calling for change. It also raises the question of how relevant critics are to a modern audience. They seem to be largely out of touch with the people they attempt to reach, and facing a generation who would check Rotten Tomatoes before they would read the Times film review. But that one's up to you. Do you think we're about to see a shift in the power that critics hold over a film's success? It's worth mentioning that the version of Girls of the Sun that I saw had been recut. Following my last point, it's worth highlighting that the film was recut in direct response to the Cannes critics' negative reviews, before an earnest audience had ever had the chance to see it. But I have it on good authority from someone who saw both versions that despite a change of music and 10 minutes less screen time, the film is largely the same. So what did I think of Girls of the Sun? My first immediate thought is that the journalist monologues of the film's opening and close should be cut. And don't worry, that's not spoilers, they add absolutely nothing to the film. I do understand that they serve a practical purpose, and that is to meet the minimum amount of French language dialogue required to qualify a film as a French language film. I don't think it's worth it. What I really want to say about this film is that it's a good example of how something imperfect can still be important. The journalist character wasn't the greatest, but was by no means as problematic as some suggested, and you might have noticed I haven't really addressed the all-female unit aspect of this film. I've ignored it on purpose because I honestly believe that people struggle to see past the gender of these characters to the action-packed war movie underneath. It needs to be measured by the standards of other action-packed war movies. If you do want to address it as a female-led film though, I still think it's an important piece of cinema that shows a genuinely unseen and honest angle of warfare. I think this film goes beyond reaching out to other women and appeals merely to humanity. In an age where Muslims are vilified, when assumptions are made about a Muslim woman's capacity, here is a film that depicts Muslims fighting extremists to regain their progressive society, in which the lives and achievements of the characters are inescapable. The film did have its imperfections. It was plagued by something that's been affecting films increasingly over recent years, which is fatty editing. Now, what I mean by that is when a scene plays out with no narrative progress for so long that you snap out of the world of the film and begin to wonder when the scene will end. A good example from this film is a scene in which the unit dance around a campfire together. Lovely at first, but after 30 seconds of noiseless dancing, it just feels uncomfortable. That being said, Girls of the Sun is a film you should absolutely see if you get the chance. And that is a big if. Following the poor reception at Cannes, the extent of the film's distribution looks uncertain, and for now, the critics retain their power over filmmaking. If you appreciated this video, please do show your support and give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give me a piece of your mind in the comments section. My thanks go to A Pleasant Ghost, Phil Topness and Bede for your kind and encouraging comments on my last video. If you haven't seen it already, do check it out. My next video will be focusing on another unreleased film I was lucky enough to catch, Wild Rose, about a country singer forced to choose between her fantasy and the reality of her two young children. If you'd like to see that and more, you can subscribe to this channel, and if you know any French film fans, please share this video with them. That's all from me, I'll be seeing you.